Jeff Angelo coming to you from the Hy-Vee studio. President Biden and Vice President Harris heading to Pennsylvania today for a campaign rally. And a lot of the discussion as they head to Pennsylvania is about the fact that they're losing support among young voters. And that's a key constituency for the Biden campaign. Let's talk this over with the commentator for Young Voices. That's Juan Pablo Villasmil on the Davison Family Dentistry Newsmaker line. Juan Pablo, thanks for joining me. Good morning. Welcome back to WHO Radio.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. What do you think about Biden, and why is he bleeding support among young voters?
Well, the first thing is that young voters, you can separate them into the very progressive ones and the more conservative types, and then the rest who are just normal folks. Among the really progressive ones, they're really dissatisfied with what's happening in Gaza, and they don't like the president at all. In the past, they were willing to vote for him because they were like, well, you know, he's not that bad, but now they're over him. And then the growing more conservative faction, where I place myself in, they just don't see a future with Joe Biden as president, just based on our very own economic experiences as we enter the labor market.
Well, and Juan Pablo, what do you think as he heads into Pennsylvania? That I think of that as a working class state, so it makes it relevant to what you just said. If people don't have a lot of economic hope, that it's a hard sell for President Biden to win re-election. Do you think that's a key message in Pennsylvania?
Well, yes, of course. Pennsylvania it's a key state. I think U.S. News World Report ranked it the number one most important state in this election. And it's because it's worth 19 electoral votes, so it's tied with Illinois as one of the most important states to win. And it's also the one where Biden and Trump are, according to the most recent polls, the closest. And when you see the problem that Biden has specifically in that state and many others, it's not just like, oh, the minorities and suburban women. No, it's young voters who are becoming an electoral powerhouse because now more than half of Generation Z can vote. That was not true in the last election. And that was not true in 2016. I could not vote in 2016. I could vote in 2020. And now I and my little brother can. So that changes things enormously.
Juan Pablo Villasmil on the Davison Family Dentistry Newsmaker line on WHO Radio. So, Juan, do young voters, if they're dissatisfied with Biden this fall, do they vote for Trump or do they stay home? What are you thinking at this point?
I think for the average person in my age group, many of them will probably stay home. I think there's a certain amount of people who are so dissatisfied that they're willing to go vote for Trump. And then, of course, there's people who have grown in conservative households or became conservative in college. But if I'm honest, Donald Trump is not that popular with my generation either.
Right.
The reason why some people would vote for Trump is just out of spite, mostly.
So, yeah, okay, out of spite. Spite for what? Spite that they're mad at Biden, they're mad at the establishment. What's driving the spite, Juan?
Yeah, I think they're mad at Biden specifically. Yeah. Like I just cannot see many of my peers that I went to college with voting for Trump out of some deep philosophical commitment to conservative principles. Because let's be honest, my generation might be more conservative than some others, but we're still not a bastion of conservatism or libertarianism or anything like that. Most of us are, moderate liberals at most. And then, again, there is a portion of conservative. I would say there's a 30% of us that are really conservative. But that gain we've seen, that amount of people saying that they won't vote for Biden, those are not necessarily people who suddenly become Trump lovers. More likely it's people who just, hate Biden with just based on, things like, oh, he's old and there's wars, things like that.
Things like that. He is a commentator for Young Voices, Juan Pablo Villasmil. Juan, thanks very much for joining me this morning. And, of course, we have this conversation